Thank you. I see the hands popping up like porcini, but we're running out of time. Flint Leverett.
Thank you, Joe. Flint Leverett from the New America Foundation. I'll pose this question to near all of the panelists, but I'll phrase it by picking up on a point that Senator Nunn made, that while the U.S. has played this important historic role in sponsoring the NPT, every president since the NPT was promulgated has fulsomely endorsed the treaty and its goals. A lot of the world doesn't think we really mean it with regard to our treaty commitments. Part of the reason there's this skepticism is, as you said, policy decisions about our own nuclear posture. But I think part of the reason, too, is what at least some parts of the world would perceive as a double standard when it comes to proliferation in some parts of the world and proliferation where some of our allies are concerned, and particularly with regard to Israel. How does the United States reconcile a serious and internationally credible commitment to denuclearization with its longstanding commitments to Israeli security, which for much of that, the history of that relationship has also been, in effect, a cover for tacit support for Israel's nuclearization? Thanks.
You're the diplomat.
Thanks so much, Sam. I owe you one. I actually have never found this as hard a question to speak to as it's supposed to be. Never since I left government. In government, it was always, I thought, particularly challenging. But my own view about this is that we don't regard all countries as the same, and we regard, for example, the nuclear weapons we all believe Israel has as presenting a different threat than to its neighbors than even the weapons that Pakistan has. And at least, let me just not put these words and thoughts in your heads. I'll say, let me reframe that. I don't regard them that way. I don't regard the Iranian program as a function of the Israeli program. I think if Israel were magically to give up its nuclear weapons, I don't think anything would change at all with respect to the motivation for the Iranian program. Whatever you may think the Iranian program is, I believe it is at least a program to produce an option for nuclear weapons acquisition. I don't regard it the same as the North Korean. So I see the Israeli program as, in classic defense terms, as having been driven by a concern not only for its particular conventional problem, which is somewhat made up for by the asymmetries in quality that they have, but they were particularly concerned about the Soviets at an early point in time, and they were looking for a deterrent. That's what I have thought was true about the motivation. So all I would say is I see the Israeli program as something that one can explain as an analyst. I'm now not talking about a diplomat. And I'd say that however, in diplomatic settings where I was in the chair, at least one I can think of, the Israelis said when, and this is sort of said when, paren, hell freezes over, close paren, but there was a kind of a thought there that when the security situation was this effect, in the region changes substantially, and our need for a particular defense posture, and there never was an admission of having nuclear weapons, of course, we would be prepared to review our position so that it might change and adjust, which strikes me as reasonable. Also, to the best of my knowledge, and I can't say this, I'd even say it under oath if I had to, I don't know of an argument or a way in which one can say that we promoted the Israeli nuclear weapon program. We have protected, and I've been part of that, Israel diplomatically when they have been subject to criticism because of the nuclear weapons program. But material assistance authorized by the U.S. government to the program I am unaware of. So this is not a heavy burden I don't think we carry here. I think we recognize rhetorically it is a burden because the expectation in the Middle East is that since we provide so much aid to Israel of one kind or another, we have an ability, if we wished, to use that aid as a lever to persuade Israel to give up their nuclear weapons. This is an otherworldly position, as best I can tell, but it is certainly a dominant one in the region. And I think addressing it directly is the best way to do it.
I'm afraid these answers have been so good and so complete that we are out of time. The Prosecco is still cold. The cheese is still on the bread, on the table. And I want to invite you to restart the reception here. We're going to continue till about 8:30. As you can see from this panel.
I want to say one other thing.
Of course. Dean Gallucci, should I let him?
Challenge to Ploughshares, who've done such a great job. All of us have got to work on our vocabulary. We speak language that the American people don't understand. If we start throwing around terms like CTBT, NPT, FMCT, INF, CFE, we are doomed. We've got to come up with a vocabulary that people understand. Tyler here is working with the evangelical community. He's working on the language. He's had some excellent articles where he's speaking to people where they can understand it. We've got to come up with terms. I use the term readiness, and taking weapons off of the readiness posture they're in now. And I found out that was the wrong term. Everything about the U.S. military indicates that they want to be ready. That's been their whole career. So I shifted it to warning time, decision time, which is really what people understand anyway. And it makes a lot of difference. So let's all work on the vocabulary and get where we can communicate. Because the people who oppose, for instance, the CTBT, Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty, they're going to have a vocabulary that people understand. But our community has a real challenge in that regard.
Thank you, Senator. Michael, as the moderator, do you have any closing thoughts?
Oh, I'm done. It was a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Joe, Ploughshares, and to Senator Nunn, Bob, Senator Hagel, thank you so much for taking the time. It's great.
As you can see from this panel, these are smart, talented leaders who are also really nice guys. We promise that as we continue this series, we will continue to make that our standard, and we will add some really nice women as well. Thank you very much. Good night.
All right. Well done.
Well, thank you.
I gotta tell you, I've gotten younger, funnier, smarter. It's been great.
We'll, I'm sure, collaborate on it.